Texas Railroad Commissioner Christi Craddick, thank you so much, and welcome to Eye on Politics.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. So let's start with the fact that you are running for Texas Comptroller in the GOP primary next March. And I'm wondering why that is and what is the essence of your campaign?
At the start of this campaign that this race is for Texans. And I think that's really important. And no matter who else enters the race and what else we're going to do, I'll put my record up against anyone. I'm excited to be to walk across the street, as I call it, to the comptroller's race. I've been at the Railroad Commission for 13 years now, and we've done a lot of really good things at the Railroad Commission that I think we can translate over to the comptroller's office. But I've got the proven record for running statewide, for running an agency, for managing a budget, for working with the legislature. And I think all of those, again, translate across the street, so to speak, because literally we are across the street when you move agencies for us. And Republican primary voters, I believe, are some of them in Texas are some of the most educated that we have. They understand what's important, what others have done, and how important it works for an agency, that you've got to have experience, that you've got to work with people, and that frankly, look, the Railroad Commission for many years, I believe, has been the most important agency because it brings in the money. 35% of the state's economy is based on oil and gas. The comptroller's office, I would say, is the other most important agency because it spends the money in the state and collects taxes and makes sure I think it should be managing people's money as well as we can in a good conservative base. So I'm excited about those opportunities.
So let's talk about that because you've got, as you know, two other major high-profile Republican candidates in the primary. You've got uh, Kelly Hancock, who is now on July 1st going to become the acting Texas Comptroller, and you also have former state senator Don Huffines, and Kelly Hancock obviously is a former state senator. So what separates you from them? And you talked about it a little bit, but why should Republican primary voters select you over these other two?
Well, first and foremost, I'm a railroad commissioner. I've just won my third election. So I'm the only statewide candidate who's won a primary. In fact, last cycle, I had 4 people in my primary against me, and I won without a runoff. So not only that, I've won statewide across the state. And I think that that's a real positive. People know who I am. I'm not having to explain to people who I am as a railroad commissioner. And I think a lot of people know who I am, period. I've been around in this state for a bit and run a good agency. But secondarily, I think it's really important to understand what an agency does, that you're working with the legislature, and have good ideas about what you ought to do to continue to improve agencies. So in my mind, first and foremost, as you walk into any business, any agency, you audit and see what is going on at that agency. You want to make sure you've got those conservative principles that we've got at the Railroad Commission. We've done a good job over there. I think the comptroller will continue to do that. So that's first and foremost. Do you have the right people? Do we need to find better people? Are we doing what we're supposed to do as an agency? How long is it taking to audit? How long is it taking to get refunds back to people? So I think those are real specifics that we need to make sure we're doing for taxpayers in the state. Look, the second thing that I think is important that we've done at the Railroad Commission, we've updated our IT. I just had a conversation earlier today, and when I say we've updated, we're on a mainframe Fortran, so we had to go a long way to get to cloud. At the comptroller, they're not as far behind, but I just talked to somebody today, and they said, we do business at the comptroller's office, and their IT's behind. Okay, you need somebody with a record who knows how to go over, explain to the legislature what we want specifically, plan for it, say we're going to have an audit and audit the process and be on time and on budget for a project. That's really important. The other thing that I think that's going to be important in this race, look, we're all talking about taxes. It doesn't matter. Nobody likes to pay them. I don't like to pay my taxes either, by the way. But I think if we're going to pay taxes, particularly local taxes, one of the things we used to do in this state, and I've gone back and asked some, because we always learn from what we've done in the past, what we did well. has gone, we used to audit and go in and audit a school board and look before they put a bond election out, for instance, and say, what's that going to cost? What does it do? What are you going to spend? And go in and say, before you do this bond election, these are the dollars you're going to spend. This is the dollars that you have available. This is the tax rate it's now going to be for the local community. I think we've missed doing that in the last several years, as well as auditing other state agencies as well to see if there's cost savings there. That's part of a real opportunity at the comptroller's office. And look, last and foremost, you're talking about two people who've worked with the legislature. Great. They've been in the legislature. I've worked with them for the last 12, 13 years. And I think if you look at what we've managed to do at the Railroad Commission, we've strengthened an agency, made it more responsive to people because we're now more transparent and more efficient as an agency. And we've worked with the legislature, and that's, as you're working on a state budget, the comptroller's office and the job at the comptroller is to give the legislature good numbers and so they can make good fiscal policy for the state. And that's a priority for this agency as well.
And so you've talked a lot about audits, et cetera, of comptroller's office and other state agencies. And I was looking on your website, and the one other thing that you're talking about on there is having a local government efficiency task force. What exactly does that entail?
So look, that's to me where you go audit local government. So if you're a school board member and you've been asked, you decide you need more money for your school district. $1 billion bond is a lot of money for anybody, by the way. Doesn't have to be $1 billion. Say it's 200 million. Pick the number. Those are high dollars for anybody who's sitting on a school board. That's a lot of money for people. Before you put that bond out, in my mind, you come ask, or you get volunteered in, that the comptroller comes in and audits that school district and says, look, these are where you're spending your dollars wisely. These are some opportunities you have to spend your dollars better. And maybe your $200 million bond could be a $100 million bond, and you can save tax dollars money, number one. Maybe you don't need that bond by the time you're finished, but at least spend those tax dollars better. And also, the taxpayer themselves ought to know as that bond's going out that this is your tax rate. This is what it's going to cost you. We need more transparency as we are doing these local tax dollars. So that's an example of where I see some opportunity for the comptroller to work with local governments, whether it's school boards, whether it's city council or county commissioner offices, and say, these are some opportunities in an audit process that you can save money, or these are dollars you can be more efficient with. And I think that's a value added for everybody. And I think really important. And we used to do this 20 years ago, and that piece we haven't done in many years. I think it's a real opportunity to pick that back up and give taxpayers at all levels a real value for their dollars as we're continuing to look at what tax dollars, where they go.
But quickly, you're saying that you would have to be requested, right? That's not
I
something
think
you
I
go
think
in.
you could request, I think you could go in, and when I say request, I think the local taxpayer could come in and say, hey, comptroller, come in and look at this. Hey, city council person wants you to come look at this. There may be some places where we as an agency decide we can go in and look without being asked. We're not going to tell local people what to do, but we should be an asset for them to use as an opportunity to save all of us dollars, and particularly their local communities.
One new function of the Texas Comptroller's Office is to stand up and establish this $1 billion school choice program that lawmakers just passed. And I'm wondering, how important is it to you that this be put in place properly, put in place on budget, on time, so that it can go into effect in the 2026-27 school year, and that it be easy to navigate and access for Texas parents?
Well, look, I think that's a priority. The legislature's passed school savings accounts, education savings accounts. I'm excited by it, by the way. I think it gives other kids of all everybody all across the state an opportunity. But if we don't do it right in the state, then we're going to have a real problem and people will be mad, and they should be. And it's real dollars. $1 billion is a lot of money. I think Florida has done a really good job. I've been researching other states and other communities with what they've done a good job. Florida's done a really good job implementing their program. And this isn't an easy program to implement. You've got to understand procurement. You've got to go out and get those bids and get it implemented really quickly. If you don't have it implemented by next March, when people are finding out and making decisions about where their kids are going to school for 2027, we're behind and the program's not been implemented well. So I'm hopeful that the comptroller's office and others that have to work on this project are doing it well. If not, when I get to be comptroller, we're going to have to fix some issues. And I hope that we do it well. I think it's a real has been a priority for this legislature and a real opportunity for the rest of the state.
Two other questions. One being the Texas Comptroller put out a report at the beginning of the year with regards to the 2023 property taxes and the fact that, what was collected as far as schools, by counties, by cities, by special districts. And it showed, I mean, once this report was out, it showed the big increases that these special districts had. I think it was like 20% plus, 10% plus for cities, 10% plus for counties. And then I think there was a decrease in the amount of school property taxes collected. But at the end of the day, taxes still went up, according to this report. Is this something that you plan on expanding or advocating or pushing out there once this is done every year so that the public knows what's really going on?
I think it's important for all of us to know where our taxes are. So yes, I think if this report has accurate information and continues to be a real value added, absolutely, I think we ought to be more transparent. And look, when you're talking about that taxes have gone up, it isn't just taxes, it's also appraisals. And I watched a very vibrant debate late at night on the Senate floor, right at the end of session this past year, talking about how we have some real challenges with appraisals too, and how we do local appraisals, what's going on, and that it was going to be really important that whoever the comptroller was for this next cycle and this next session, that they work with the legislature to work not just on what local taxes are, but also how we work and work on appraisals, work on educating people on appraisals and how we do appraisals. So I think we talk about one piece of the tax program, but I think appraisals are the other piece that need to be more vibrantly looked at. And we need to work with local, because it is local entities. I mean, I live in Travis County. I can tell you our appraisals go up every single session after they've lowered taxes. And you think, well, did I get anything for this? I think a lot of people feel that way. So it isn't just the tax dollars being charged, but it's the appraisals that we've got going on.
And just following up, is there anything that stands out to you as far as the appraisals on what should be done?
I think it's part of the conversation to get with local tax appraiser districts, get a lot of people in the room, and let's see how we resolve the issues better than what we're doing today.
One other political question for you, and that is with uh, former Senator Hancock now going to be the acting Texas Comptroller on July 1st. He's been endorsed by Governor Abbott. You have Don Huffines, who's been endorsed by Senator Ted Cruz. Do you think that that puts you at an unfair advantage?
Actually, I think that there is no unfair advantage. And frankly, I'm the only one who's run statewide. So I've won across the state. A lot of people, again, know me, know my record, and we look forward to reminding people what our record is. I think endorsements are a small piece of it. People want to know you, and we're going to work hard so people know who I am, remind people who I am and what I've done for the state already and what we plan on doing going forward. So I appreciate that they've got some endorsements. We have a lot of endorsements too. You can play the endorsement game, but it really is who runs a better campaign and who has a better message. And today I would say that that's me.
Texas Railroad Commissioner Christi Craddick running for Texas Comptroller. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.